Hello, Opening Pathways viewers. This is Tom LeNoble. It's great to have you with me today. I have a great guest for you today, Ben Lai, who is here with us. He's the co-founder of Silver Lining Consulting and has an incredible background we're going to hear about today on our podcast. Ben, welcome to Opening Pathways.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
It's a delight. I'm curious as we get started here, if you could, tell the viewers a little bit about Silver Lining Consulting, but also I'd like to know as you're doing that, what was it that gave you the idea to start the company?
Yeah, so what we do in Silver Lining Consulting, interestingly, it's started up between myself and my wife. Both me and her cover pretty much the whole uh, full funnel of the marketing funnel. And yeah, both of us had the idea to start it up, considering, she's from the background of being, from a CPG, creative sort of branding lens, whereas I'm coming more from a more quantitative and technical lens from my background. So both of us have a good complementary skill set to cover for, any sort of need in marketing, whether it's something that's, more quantitative and more, calculated and performance based versus something that's a little bit more creative and, how to sort of really give a punch, let's say, to the marketing world and whatever people are selling.
Wonderful. Sounds like a great team on multiple levels.
Yeah.
Good. So tell me this. You started Silver Lining, and when was it that you knew this is it? This is my path.
Yeah, so we started it actually late last year in 2024. And, we were, both of us were in the corporate world of things, right? We've always been in that corporate world. We've always been, told to, hey, keep a sort of stable job and, heads down and sort of climb the corporate ladder, that type of expectation. But the more we were immersed in that sort of environment, the more we thought about, um, there isn't much, let's say, financial security in many ways, or job security in many ways, especially nowadays with, layoffs, coming left, right, and center. There's the fact that, a lot of the 50-hour, 60-hour weeks that we worked were for someone else, right? And someone else to build their sort of empire, their sort of business. And so that's where we started to think about, okay, well, how can we bring in together our skill sets and really think about a way of how we can have a little bit more freedom in that sort of side of things. How can we think of building our own sort of business? And it doesn't have to be like a business that needs to go an IPO and things like that, right? But something that, it gives us sort of a level of comfort, financial comfort, and also allows us to bring in and contribute our skill sets that we've acquired over the last, 15 plus years that we've worked in corporate and working for big companies and smaller companies and startups. How do we sort of bring those sort of insights and learnings to other type of businesses? And that's sort of what inspired us to, at least start our own consulting side of things. For myself, I started to have a little bit of interest on small startups approaching me and asking me, hey, can you come in and help us in this sort of project and this sort of thing? And then this sort of gave us a good, I guess, foot in the door, and gave us a little bit of a sign of thinking about, hey, maybe this is a good time for us to start something and then, build upon that. And so that's allowed myself to sort of step back a little bit from the corporate side of things and gave me that comfort to do so, to, take on more opportunities and, to be honest, also see a lot more things outside of a, multi-billion dollar business, right?
Yeah.
And to really help out, folks who are trying to scale not from, you know, 10 million to 150 million, 200 million, but for people who are just going from like a couple of 100,000 or even 100,000 to $1 million business.
Yeah, I love this idea. You and I have talked, and we kind of have some similarity in working for big companies and startups and going out on our own. And there's something about being on your own where you're managing your own time and you're making your own way that's really great. And I think we both have that experience of being at larger companies and startups where I assume you too learned a lot and shared a lot and did a lot that also, as you said, helps us get a foot in the door at times. So it's kind of a great trajectory, but I like getting up and being knowing that what I'm doing, I'm doing it, and it's for me, it's for my clients, it's for what I'm working on, and there's something about it that I think is really, really inspiring. So I want to know, since you've been on this journey, do you ever doubt your vision and what got you through it?
Um, I mean, there's been at times where it's been difficult, right? You wake up and you don't really have things scheduled for the week, right? You don't have let's call it a 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, right? Where you have, hey, I have these set hours for work. I have this number of meetings for this week. And, you have things pre-planned, let's say if you were in corporate. And so, jumping into creating my own consulting business, it's a lot is in some ways like you have to teach yourself to fish. If you
Yeah,
don't go there, right, and to actually go fishing, you're not going to get any fish, right? And that sort of stuff is not, um, I feel like it's things that corporate doesn't really teach you that much, right? They have set guidelines. You have like, what your KPIs are, what your half is, and what your roadmap is, and you have a lot of those planned. Um, and you have a huge dependency on a team and things like that as well. So coming into something that's independent where you're doing stuff yourself, there is that self-doubt of like, am I doing things right? There's no one really to bounce it against except yourself and, well, for my case, my wife, right? And vice versa. So there's moments where, you know, there's a week where there might not be any meetings going on, right? And so you give your sort of thought of like, hey, is this the right way? Should I jump back into full time? Should I, and then you have moments where you just have so many meetings or you have a few projects happening at the same time where you're like working 6, 7 days a week just to catch up stuff. So it's in those moments where it's at times you think about it and go, hey, it's a little bit cyclical. It's going to be times where you're going to be very busy, times where you're not. And in some ways you can choose when you want to be busy. But I think a key learning of starting your own consultancy is um, you technically don't work in exactly your time zone. You work in like your client's time
yes.
and things like that. So you might be, doing business development and finding clients and stuff like that. But all those might not fall into place until 2 months later, and they all fall into place at the same time, right? So it's almost like, when it rain, it pours in some ways. Like you invest in this time and then it all comes into place. But so that's sort of I've gone through periods of that cycle where it's like, okay, it's quiet, but then, you start to do a lot more other stuff to keep yourself busy. And then those things come into fruition and you become very busy and you then wind back of like, okay, maybe I should start rejecting certain projects and stuff like that because I only have so much time and I don't want to hinder the quality of my output just because you know, I have some hours to do more things like
Yeah, yes, the little lull can spark that thought of, is there something wrong? But I like to remember, just like you say, that there's something coming really quickly. I was coaching a client the other day, and she was expressing to me, she's the CEO of her company, and she was saying, I don't have anything to do. And so I asked her, well, what do you mean you don't have anything to do? She goes, well, they're moving the office today, and I feel like I should be doing something. And I said, well, are you going to go load the trucks? And she said, of course not, but I feel like I should be doing something. And so by the time we got through the call, she decided to take a 2-day holiday and take a train and go somewhere just for something to do that, realizing that as soon as the office opened, she was going to be swamped and really busy again. And to maybe that was just a little time being offered to her that she got to enjoy that energy of enjoyment that we sometimes can forget about. Tell me this. You know, did you have mentors? Go back and look in the past as things were happening along this journey. Did Ben have mentors?
Um, I would say I didn't have a mentor per se that I always followed and things like that. I feel like a lot of where I bounce ideas and like business and all that, I've been lucky enough to find my wife who is sort of in that sort of realm of business and in that business approach as well. So she's been my key partner, bouncing ideas, guide as well as, vice versa, right? I think me and her have similarities on the business side, but very contrasting um, skill sets and strengths and how to analyze certain situations. I tend to be more logical and analytical. She tends to take a little bit more risk, and that sort of really balances out for us. So I would say from a mentorship standpoint, I've had guides who can, give hints and, previous managers that I've worked with in Mural, in Meta, in Dropbox that I've worked with to sort of help spark that. But a lot of them come from the fact that they haven't really started their own business, right? They've moved on to other corporate roles, and which is fine. Like I said, like there's a lot of definitely a lot of positives associated with staying in corporate and climbing that corporate ladder. But funnily enough, the one thing that skipped my mind just then was actually one person that gave us some fuel, let's say, to become independent, was actually a when we were in San Francisco, the person that bought our place in San Francisco. And she actually started her own business and went from a corporate, like I think Ralph Lauren, to become an independent consultant. And that gave us she gave us really good advice, guidance, things to pitfalls, things like that to look out for when starting your own business. And funnily enough, gave us a good sort of structure and for us to take that leap for both of us. And just to be clear, like both me and my wife didn't take the leap with nothing. We had corporate roles when we
Yeah.
started in the beginning, and before it built momentum, we wanted to have a little bit of a safety net in some ways. But then we decided, hey, we're starting to see some traction on things. So how do we sort of then, what's the right time? There's never a
Yes.
right time, but like once you see that momentum, you sort of take a leap. And I think both me and her have good enough experiences that if we ever wanted to, if it was a mistake, we could always go back.
Yes, yes. So tell me, what's been the biggest turning point so far
Um, I'd say the biggest turning point for my career, you mean?
in the company, in the new company?
In the company, yeah. I think in the new company, the biggest turning point has been when we decided to pretty much double down a bit on the CPG sector. So both my wife and I have had different health experiences, let's say, or health scares that sort of had food become a very critical component to how we've improved our well-being in our lives. And so we wanted to sort of give back to that type of industry. And so we gave a little bit of a conscious effort to try and, I guess, network, try and sort of get into that type of industry, considering me and her have a very tech sort of background. It's a very, very different industry to get into, let's say. It's definitely not as easy as me reaching out to previous networks or previous friends and things like that to get into. And us being based in Los Angeles, that definitely helped a lot. And so we started attending network events. We started attending places that things like that. And, people started introducing us to other founders and people within the food and wellness industry. And that was a very big turning point for us to see where we would add value, right? See where we would fit into that sort of category, how we sort of can relate with our skill sets and how we can sort of really help like companies of different sizes from like, people who are just cooking in their kitchen to scaling up to people who have multinational distribution networks,
Yeah,
right? So that
yes.
was a very interesting area considering, and on top of that, it kind of helps that that industry is very in person. It's not like tech where it's like, you can do stuff and do business remote. A lot of what happens in CPG and in food, you have to meet the person, you have to talk to them, they have to see stuff being built, they have to see, as it is like, food being produced in the factory, right? You see the actual final product and the ingredients. And so that definitely helps us as well in that sort of turning point in how we've established. I wouldn't say dominantly, but we've sort of been able to establish a presence in that industry that we never thought we would ever be able to, enter.
Wonderful. So, we're in certainly a tech revolution right now with AI. I've seen a few of these, I know, in my life from I remember watching the first fax and thinking it was magic, and of course, email and the internet and social media and AI, which I think is one of the biggest ones we've certainly seen. And it's sort of like I've heard people equate it a little bit to the gold rush of how what's going on in it. So I'm curious how you in your business today, how you're approaching the use of tech with AI, and also I'm learning from people as we do this, there's a balance here of how we innovate with these new tools and how we also think about sustainability, maybe to keep the lights on. So share with us what you think about AI and how are you applying it?
Yeah, so for us, for myself, I use AI mainly in terms of as a partner, right? As a way for us to execute a lot of the strategy that we want to have in place. I see AI not necessarily as a replacement, but as an assistant. And I make fun of it in ways that is like, okay, let me ask my assistant in terms of how to scale it and things like that, right? I think it's important to have a good basis of what you and experience of what you see is like, okay, this will work or won't work and things like that. Because ultimately AI will spit out whatever it's been taught to or what it's seen, let's say, and what it's been fed, right? But there's a skill set of, having experience, things like that, of like, hey, I don't think this is going to apply really to this type of company, or it's not going to apply to this type of way of scaling because of these other things as well. It gives a very solid foundation to draw on for probably 30-40% of the way. And then it requires all these micro tweaks and stuff like that to get it to
Yes.
the finish line. What I found that it does very well is, in some ways, content creation. If you have a very good idea of, okay, this is the type of strategy, this is the type of channels we want to hit, and things like that, and you don't want to write I don't know, a two-page blog sort of situation, you can have a pretty good outline of what it is, and then have it sort of fill out essentially that sort of two-pager, right? And then you become the editor or,
Yes.
editor in chief, and you come in and sort of start making those changes and tweaks and things like that to make it make sense, less robotic and all that sort of stuff to get it to the finish line. So ultimately, I'm definitely not a proponent of just spitting out whatever AI is and then copy and pasting it. I'm definitely a proponent of how does it take you from like 0 to 40 and then help, there's a little bit of refinement from 40 to 60, 70, and then the rest from 70 onwards would be your edits and giving that sort of, I guess, human touch, human
Yes.
personality, your sort of experience and personality into it.
Yes. I had an experience the other day. I was using AI and I was creating a graphic. I thought it might be simpler, and I found myself after a while having a little argument with it. And then I realized I was typing in there that how unhappy I was. Well, it makes you're right no matter what you write. It apologizes and tells you you're right. And at one point, I found myself getting a little too involved, and I had to start laughing out loud because I was, having this conversation that was not like I would even have with a human, with this AI that wasn't giving me what I needed, and it really was me not giving it what it needed, which I think your point is there. You have to feed it the right information for it to help you. But I'm with you. I think there's a way that's a collaborative use of it that helps you be a little more efficient, but doesn't take the place of us using our own creativity and brain. So tell me this: when the stakes are high, how do you make decisions?
Well, when the stakes are high, I try to sort of take a step back in some ways because knowing myself, and some people are like that as well. The impulse is to act on emotions, right? And to panic or to think of, okay, how do I patch it up? How do I fix things immediately and stuff like that? Because you don't want to see something going wrong, right? But I like to sort of take a step back, take a breath, and start thinking, okay, well, how do I plan some of this out? How do I sort of think about what do I tackle first? How do I prioritize things? How do I sort of structure things? And sort of take a more methodic approach of how to approach whatever the high stakes item is. Like if it's a firefight that needs to occur, right? It can wait, you know, you can wait an hour, like, or even 30 minutes, right? It doesn't have to be immediately taken like in the next minute or so. So having a more proper way of approaching it in even 30 minutes afterwards is better than acting upon it in the first 5 minutes. And you'll find, like, or at least for me, I find that, it becomes exponentially more clear. But first 5 minutes versus the first 30 minutes versus an hour, it becomes exponentially more and more easy and more methodic to be able to address whatever that high priority thing is. And, you know, even an hour after, when you are able to then act upon it, um, it becomes a better solution. And if anything, doesn't open up to more other fires, let's say, that might
Yes, yeah,
occur. Exactly. And so it just I try to sort of take that approach into, in some ways, if I was to summarize it, to calm down, let's say.
yes, yes.
Right.
Take a breath.
Yeah.
Take a
Take,
breath, get centered, and move forward, right? So
yeah.
tell me, since you started the consulting business, what have you learned about trust?
Good question. Um, I think a lot of trust. I've had to put a lot of things on trust, not just on people, but also trusting like the process, trusting in myself, trusting in all these different aspects. So the trust is, and the trust is the difficult part is about time as well, because you can always trust the process, but how long do you give it? You can always trust yourself, but how long do you give yourself? Right? I think trust is in some ways, I always, with anyone, as well externally, I give everyone the benefit of the doubt always. So you always have my trust until it's broken, right? So that's the way I like to view things, with my clients, with people I work with the people I meet and network. There's always that initial thought of like, you're a great person and I love what you're doing, and the way you're growing the business and all that sort of stuff. And there's that level of trust of um, whatever you're saying is the truth, right? That, there's nothing overly exaggerated. You're not, cooking the books on the background or anything like that. There's always that sort of level where I give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And so that's more the external side. For myself, it's really trusting the process that, things are going to be okay, right? At first, and, this alludes slightly to the earlier question you have of, um, taking that sort of leap to do my own business is uh, there's moments where I'm like, okay, maybe this isn't meant to work out. And, you have these sort of slow periods where you start to lose trust in yourself and, you're in the wrong path and things like that. And there's always that little voice in your head to always jump back to safety. But what sort of brings me back is always, well, there really isn't a safety anymore. There really isn't do you want to go back and sort of get back to where you were 8 months ago or 10 months ago and things like that because the grass is always greener on the other side, right? And so that's that brings me back to trusting myself. I've succeeded in other things besides business as well. Like I've had trust in my hobbies, my other projects that I have outside of a career, outside of work. Why can't I do the same level of trust to something I've been doing for 15 plus years?
Yes, I love this grass is greener idea because I know with clients sometimes I have to ask the question, while you're looking at the greener grass over there on the other side, I'm just curious, did you water the grass you're standing on first? Have you tended to the garden that you're in and before you think about moving on? So tell me, how does Ben define success beyond metrics, beyond the KPIs, beyond those things? How do you define success?
I define success as when you're able to um, really have a good balance, and everyone's different, right? For me, it's the balance between life and fulfillment.
Hmm.
You can always, work on, you know, whatever you want to work on in terms of work, career, things like that. But are you fulfilled, right? You could be successful from a, let's say, so-called a metric standpoint of money and things like that, and maybe fame and, for some people and things like that. But does that leave you fulfilled? Does that leave you coming home like, you know what? I really enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy, um, spending whatever it is. It could be 3 hours, could be 10 hours, right? On whatever you might be working on and leaves you sort of fulfilled in making a difference, right? And making a change and an impact and things like that. Um, and the other side is life in that, you know, there is that sort of moment of, that process, but there's life that also, I wouldn't say gets in the way, but like life happens, right? Like, for me, you, for me, you and everyone, like for myself, it's my family, I want to make sure I'm in a spot where I can dedicate time to family, to things that aren't, I'm not talking about marketing or work or things like that. It's just me just living life, being able to travel, being able to see things that I couldn't see the last 15 to 20 years of working, right? Do I have that flexibility to do that, right? And so to me, if someone who's able to match those two things together, that would be what I would define success. And you're not locked down to something that um, you're there just because. That's it.
Yes, yes, I like this word fulfillment. Tell me, what values are non-negotiable in your organization?
Um, For me, it is transparency of communication. And for me, that is ultimately leads to multiple different things like trust, like, like fulfillment, like, all these other sort of areas. Because if you have open communication and obviously truthful communication, right? And transparency, um, it's at least me and my wife, it's definitely a 1 plus 1 equals 5 sort of situation. Um, I can sort of be in her shoes and understand what the situation is and how I would approach it in a different way, or, and provide different ideas and vice versa as well. Because with that open communication and full transparency, there's nothing that, let's say, keeps us in the dark for whatever reason and for us to second guess stuff and all that. So it really helps in terms of moving things forward with the company, into building it, into, if we were to decide to, invest or build in a separate company outside of consulting, it allows us to work as a team in terms of, okay, if she wants to go and decide to build that and all that, great. It's good that you communicated that to me. Okay, I can make plans on what I want to react on, if you want to move into that venture or move into that sort of investment or build your own sort of startup, right? And so it allows us to work as one. And with any organization, it's the same. Like that transparency communication, ultimately everyone sort of wants what's best to move things forward. And so that open communication allows for that.
Wonderful. What's your boldest vision for Silver Lining Consulting in the next 5 years?
Bold vision. I would say we would probably have three different areas, and we're sort of starting on that. Is one is the consulting and that sort of arm, right? And we have that to essentially help, for the lack of a better term, like keep the lights on, let's say,
Yes.
and move things forward. We have investments and things like that. So we act like angel investors for many businesses, and that sort of helps us, foster ourselves both from our financial independence as well as understanding what it's like and how founders think, and really get into that sort of ideology. Um, and then the third side of things is being just an advisor mentor on that side.
Yes.
So it's a little bit less um, transactional compared to the previous two. And it's a lot more around, okay, how do I then foster and build and add that value to people without any expectation of return back, right? Because for the other two, there is a contract drawn, there is a expectation and all these sort of things. Whereas an advisor and mentor, not necessarily. It's more so how do you get that sort of fulfillment, be able to sort of help, move companies on, grow things. And, I think it's a little bit of a karma situation as well, right?
Yeah.
When you're able to help out where possible, sort of good things come to people who sort of are able to network and be able to sort of really help out.
Yes, 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 yes. Tell me, what advice do you wish every new emerging leader or someone starting on the path of being a founder, what advice do you think would be great if they could hear?
Um, I would say being persistent in trusting yourself, right? There's going to be moments where, um, a lot of founders I've found, well, seen, have great ideas. It's just maybe the wrong time, or maybe it's like the wrong approach, or whatever it might be. And so I think most founders are, they're smart people. They've tried to get some sort of product market fit. They've done the work. They've, do things and stuff like that. It's not like they've found something or they've discovered or had an idea um, yesterday and just go and build, and think it today. But it's more so the founders who are, they've built something, started to build something, started to get some traction, started to see some things happening, like I said, they're mostly smart people, and so it doesn't come out of nowhere, that idea. So
Yes,
therefore, it's like trusting in yourself, trusting in the fact that, and the persistence is a key thing, because you're going to have folks who, or even yourself, are going to think about it and like, oh, am I doing the right thing? And like, no, this isn't going to work, and things like that. And you might have slow days or bad weeks where you're going to be like, um, yeah, I want to do something else instead, or it's not really paying out, or whatever the performance metric might be, right, to that individual. But it's really staying course to that. Obviously, pivot when necessary, but make sure you've exhausted all possible sort of thoughts of that idea to try everything out, and in the end, you only live one life, right? Or I know some people believe in more, right? But like there is,
Well, this one we only live one for sure.
yeah, for this one, yeah. So, why not go ahead and have no regrets, right? On that side of
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
Doesn't work out, doesn't work out. That's fine. Life always has a way to course correct itself.
I believe it does. I believe it does. So tell me, Ben, if your younger self were watching this podcast we're doing, what would you tell him?
I would say, definitely, definitely not be, don't be afraid to take risks. I've always been a person that tends to be more conservative, let's say, on that front, on the business side of things and all that. So taking risk, taking a chance, sometimes, if I was to think of all the times I um, could have had an opportunity, right, to take a leap of faith. I who knows, I might be in a better spot or maybe a worse spot, right?
Yes.
But I've had so many opportunities where I've had and thought back, like, you know what, could have done this instead or could have done that instead. Well, it goes back to the point of like living with no regrets. If you've had something, that opportunity, that exact same opportunity may not come again, right? And so that's what I would tell myself. Take the
Yes.
risk,
Yes.
don't live with regrets.
Yeah, I love this whole idea of taking risks. In fact, my business is built about risks and resilience. I've taken some risks that have turned out really well, and I've taken a few that I like to look back on them and realize there's no do-overs, but what did I learn from it? What can I carry forward as I move forward? Well, Ben Lai, it's been great to have you on the show today. Silver Lining Consulting, the co-founder. Tell our guests, our viewers, where they can find you.
Yep. So you can either connect with myself on LinkedIn, or also my wife as well. Also, if you go to the LinkedIn page, we have a page, Silver Lining Consulting. We also have a website as well, so feel free to reach out over there, or just even say hi on LinkedIn. I'm always responsive on there, so uh, happy for you to message me, and I'll definitely be replying back within a 24-hour situation.
Great. Ben, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
Yes. And to my viewers, this is Opening Pathways with Tom LeNoble, and I'll see you next time.